The horror, the calamity, the sky is falling, all is lost. Yeesh. Is it just me, or does it feel like we really like to freak out about changes in the housing market? One of my real life heroes, the late great Hans Rosling, used to talk about data as therapy. Because when we have facts, it's an antidote to the drama that our media likes to create. So stay tuned for this month's market update on housing demand, interest rates, local market conditions, and some practical tips for home buyers and home sellers so that you can navigate the housing market like a boss. Hey, I'm Heather Matthias with eXp Realty here in Spokane, Washington. And listen, I get it. The housing market has been going through some dramatic and unprecedented changes over the past couple of years, along with everything else that's been going on in the world. Then Jerome Powell, chairman of the Fed, goes in front of the whole world and says things like, "We are headed for a difficult correction, and it's going to be painful." And the media says, "Thanks, Jerome. Those are some very alarming and clickable statements." Big picture, yes, our policymakers do need to make some tough choices to lead us back to stability in our economy. And frankly, their level of capacity for doing so is the subject of a lot of entertaining discussion. But I will just say, if you have to scream about it, you're trying to win a fight, not actually solve a problem. If you are like most folks, what you're really worried about is, what does this mean for me? So let's let the Fed do the Fed and take a look at our local market so you can understand the circumstances right here in our backyard that are driving market conditions. It's really a tale of two Spokanes. Some houses are selling and some houses are sitting. We still have seriously pent-up buyer demand for housing nationwide because the combination of the younger generation growing up, folks living way longer, and poor infrastructure planning by policymakers has created this huge shortage in housing. According to Freddie Mac, we're short about 3.8 million housing units to keep up with household formation. That's just the math, guys. Let's take a look at our local market in Spokane and get a sense of where we're at. Our highest median home price this year, and ever, was $450,000 with the closed sales in May. When we look at the closed sales in September, we can see that the median home price is down to $410,000 in Spokane County for residential homes. It's still up 6.5% year over year, and you can see that we've sold less homes, and that active inventory, that just means homes that are on the market but haven't accepted an offer yet, are way up over the same time last year. And we've also got less new listings, which means less sellers are choosing to put their homes on the market than at the same time last year. Now, while that is a handy snapshot of our local market kind of overall, I find that it's helpful to look at more tangible examples. I recently ran a report for one of my clients in the Northwood neighborhood here in the Valley. One of the things I looked at for them in the report is the contrast between active homes and pending homes. Now, please keep in mind, this is a snapshot that was tailored specifically for a single property, and every property is unique, but it does illustrate the point that I want to make pretty nicely. So when I pulled the comparable homes to theirs, in addition to the homes that had recently closed, we've got a group of homes that are active and a group of homes that are under contract. You can see that the active homes have very different numbers from the homes that are getting an offer accepted. And I think the median home price is a clue as to why. What we're really talking about here is affordability. The dramatic inflation in home prices over the past few years meant that every month when home prices went up, less of our local community of home buyers could afford to buy. The median household income in the United States is right around $67,000 a year. This means that a household making the median income can afford a mortgage of around $250,000 and has likely found themselves priced out of owning a home in many markets, but certainly not all markets in the United States. Now, if we look at incomes in Spokane, our median income is right around $60,000. It's a little lower than the national median, but not by much. This chart I have on the screen breaks down household income by population percentage, so you can kind of see how wealth is distributed in Spokane, and also how we compare to Washington State overall. Supply and demand is a concept most of us understand. In a perfect world, housing costs and incomes would travel together. But because policymakers have put such downward pressure on the supply for decades, that just means we haven't been building enough houses to keep up with household formation. Buyer demand drove the prices way up. At our current median home price of $410,000, if we take the worst case scenario interest rate at around 7%, it's the households making about $85,000 and above, or about 40% of our population that can afford to spend that amount. Now, the other side of that equation are interest rates. There was quite the buzz in the media in response to Jerome Powell's remarks a couple of weeks ago. Powell is the chair of the Federal Reserve and has been stomping around, warning of aggressive plans to combat inflation all year long. Now, with a 43% increase in housing prices over the past 2 years, in my view, it's a much needed correction. The housing inflation is not sustainable and needs to come back down to meet the incomes of our local homebuyers. So we have policymakers creating inflation by suppressing the supply side, and now the Fed is moving to disrupt the demand side with the only tool they really have at their disposal, interest rates. Much like the rising home prices were leaving our local community of buyers behind, the rising interest rates are just going to further reduce the number of folks who can buy a house, so that prices are going to get forced back down. And that's what we're seeing. And it's now over 7%. What this means is that the $410,000 median home price with a 5% down payment would have had a mortgage payment of around $1,600 last year, but at the current rates is going to be around $2,700. To get that same $1,600 mortgage payment now, the house you can afford to buy is $230,000. You can see the dilemma. Listen, I'm a real upside-oriented kind of person, and even though I have deep frustration with policymakers because I'm such an advocate for housing affordability, I always want to try to find like a little hope or inspiration so I can keep doing the work. You know that Mr. Rogers look for the helpers meme that tends to surface in times of distress? That's kind of what came to mind. Well, I feel like that meme can kind of infantilize adults who have the agency to have an impact on the world. It is also at the same time true, and a strategy I often utilize. It reminds me to turn my attention away from the voices that aren't offering solutions and towards the folks who show up every day to solve problems and get the job done. I've had conversations in the last couple of weeks with 2 new lending partners who are helpers. They are problem solvers who are working to make home ownership attainable, and it is downright inspiring. Shoot me a message if you want their numbers. Also, I'll be starting a live Q&A here on Wednesdays at 7 p.m., so you'll probably meet them soon. All right, so what does this mean for homebuyers? I really need to point out the good news here for homebuyers. Houses are finally going on sale. I love a sale. All that power and leverage that sellers have had for the past couple of years is coming your way. There are lots of strategies we can employ to make your home purchase affordable, and sellers with these huge equity gains are in a position to help you get into a home. While most people's initial go-to is to ask for a price reduction on the sale price, usually a seller credit towards either an interest rate buy down or closing costs is going to have a bigger impact either on your cash flow or your monthly payment. Now, okay, if you're like my husband, the interest rate is the thing you care about. You might want to consider buying new construction with someone like D.R. Horton. They're currently offering 4.99% interest rates because they're doing it in-house. They've got their own financing. The important takeaway, you've got options. So make sure you're working with partners who are about options and solutions. All right, so what does this mean for home sellers? The good news, if you're thinking about selling your home, is the past few years of dramatic inflation mean you have lots of equity to work with when it comes time to sell your home. And if we consider my example from Northwood that I was talking about a few minutes ago, the right strategy will still get your home sold fairly quickly. The things you want to pay attention to when it's time to list your home are making sure your prospective agents have options and solutions for getting your home sold. You of course want smart marketing because we want to get your home in front of the maximum number of potential buyers. But you also want to position your home competitively with smart incentives that ease the burden on buyers without forcing you to give up tens of thousands of dollars in a price reduction. Shoot me a message and we can talk about how to get that done. Listen, the decision about whether or not to buy or sell is rarely driven by market factors. It's primarily driven by your own goals, needs, and priorities. Your job is to find the right partners to help you accomplish those goals in the market conditions you're working with. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe to my channel to stay up to date. Talk to you soon.